going to call this meeting to order, August 18th, 2020, and it's 5:30 p.m. And if you will all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, Mr. Alexander is going to lead us.
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
One of these days.
Okay, if we can get an adoption of the agenda, please.
Yes, I'd like to make a motion to adopt the agenda for August 18th, 2020, as submitted.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries. First item of business is information presentation from Mrs. Erin Johnson on the trust insurance policy.
Good evening, Mr. Board President, members of the board, Superintendent. Thank you for having me this evening. I want to talk to you a little bit about some extra insurance that we have available to us. I also want to let you know that we have Kendra Callahan on the phone. She is from the trust, and she will be able to assist with any questions that you might have at the end of the presentation this evening. So we'll go ahead and get started here. So before the start of each year, the trust works with reinsurance partners to coordinate coverage. For the fiscal 21 renewal, the trust was notified that there would be an exclusion for organic pathogens. The logic behind the exclusion is similar to providing the source of the cold or the flu. There really is no way of knowing where it's contracted, and if the same would apply to COVID-19. There are just too many avenues for exposure. So without the protection against potentially huge losses, the trust followed suit and excluded COVID-19 claims from coverage effective 7/1/20. However, the trust did some investigating and proposed a solution to its board on August 4th, 2020. The board approved a plan that allows districts to purchase an endorsement for coverage. The cost is based on a school's ADM, and we fall in the highlighted area at $20,000. So this would be an annual cost of $20,000. You might be asking what other cost is this involved, and there are deductibles with some variables. So a $0 deductible would apply if we elect to use waivers for our students. A $10,000 deductible will apply if we elect to use acknowledgments for our students. And a $20,000 deductible will apply if we elect not to use any type of waiver or acknowledgement form. And each of these deductibles is per occurrence. So there are some templates that the trust attorneys have prepared and shared with districts around the state. Those are in your packet as well. So the first one that we can look at is, let's see here. We're going to look at the waiver for parents or guardians to sign on behalf of their students. And I don't know if I can get to it on here or not, but you guys have a copy. So obviously, a waiver is going to be much more in depth than an acknowledgement would be, and they're going to forego any risk or liability if their student should happen to contract COVID-19. The next template that you have in your packet is for visitors. So this would be used for contractors and those that maybe would be on campus more often than not, but aren't an employee of ours. And then the third one that you have in the waiver category is more in the form of a sign-in sheet. So this would be if someone were just popping in quickly, we would have them just read this paragraph and sign underneath it. They're not going to go through the entire form and do it that way. Thankfully, we don't have many visitors on campus right now, but we may have the occasional delivery person or something that needs to come in beyond our office, and so we would have them do the sign-in sheet. Next is the acknowledgement template that you guys have in your packet. This one is a little bit more broad and is basically acknowledging, all of our protocols that we're taking in place to recognize the symptoms of their child and know that, they can't come to school if they're sick, they need to remain home until they're symptom-free, those kinds of things. So You might be asking how these forms protect the district. These forms may reduce the district's liability. A jury would look at fault in part based on a party assuming risk, injury, or illness. The forms are relevant to a jury's analysis of which party bared fault, including those that knowingly assumed the risk. So you might be asking, what about those that don't sign? How is that handled? So there's very likely that we may have some that will refuse to sign a waiver. And how would that impact the district? Well, the $20,000 deductible would apply because we wouldn't have an acknowledgement or waiver in place. Once again, in addition to the purchase of an endorsement, we must have strict health and safety guidelines in place. That's why we have developed the protocols that we have to include the signage that you see around the district, promote social distancing when possible, and the requirement of face coverings. There has been some discussion about districts being granted immunity at either the state or federal level. If this ends up being the case, after we purchase the endorsement, we are being told by the trust, it is not, they're not looking to make money on this, and we would receive a loyalty credit towards next year's policy. So we would be able to get some of that back. When would coverage begin? In part, that depends on when we sign up for it, basically, when you guys decide if you want to sign up for it. So if we sign up for it by September 15th, the coverage would be retroactive to July 1st. If we sign up after the 15th, it would take effect the day that we sign up for it. I personally would like to recommend that we wait as close to September 15th as possible in the hopes that we are granted immunity, and then that way there's no cost out of our pocket. And we don't have to pay for it up front and then get a credit. So we haven't talked about staff at all, and so you might be wondering, we've talked about the waivers and acknowledgments for our students, for visitors, for vendors, for contractors. But as far as our staff goes, we would not have them sign either of these forms because they would be covered under workman's compensation. And so for teachers and other district staff, if an employee believes that he or she has contracted COVID due to an exposure while in the workplace, the claim would be reported on a workman's compensation claim. Arizona workman's compensation statutes will be followed in making decisions. Any claims will be handled like any other through the workman's comp, and other districts and our district's insurer would investigate the claim. We feel that having these forms is important along with the purchase of the endorsement. Based on risk factors and mitigation strategies, we were recommending the purchase of the endorsement as well as the acknowledgement of risk form for all students attending school in person and the waiver of liability form for student athletes, volunteers, and contractors. So with that, if there are any questions that myself or Kendra can answer, we'd be happy to do so.
Ryan, do you have anything?
I have nothing right now.
Okay. Sandy?
No.
Susan?
So is the trust, when you refer to the trust, is that the company that we currently have our school liability, all of our insurance coverage through?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. And then we already have some students that have been on campus for various reasons. Have we had them sign anything before coming on campus?
No, we have not. There were, during summer practices, athletes did sign permission forms, but as far as our students that have been on campus to this point, no, they have not signed anything yet. But pending your approval, we would like for them to begin that immediately.
And then if we do elect to do the coverage closer to September 15th, then it would still be valid for?
Correct, retroactive to July 1st.
Okay. And how do we implement it, like, going forward? So if we open on October 19th or whenever, would we then require that form before they come on campus?
Yes.
Okay. I think that's everything.
Okay.
Ron, do you have any?
Yes, I have a question. Back on early on when you were showing how the deductibles are structured, you stated that if we elect to have a waiver, it's 0, or if we elect to have a statement of acknowledgement, it's 10,000,
Correct.
Is it if we elect to have that, or if the individual sign that?
It would be, it's per occurrence, so we're recommending that we have the acknowledgement form put in place for all students that are in person, and then the waiver for those that are participating in athletics. And so what it is it's per occurrence. So if we purchase this endorsement and a person that did not sign any of our forms, then we pay $20,000 per occurrence. If they sign the acknowledgement, it's $10,000. If they sign a waiver, it's $0.
Okay, so it's not if we elect to have these, it's if they actually sign that.
Correct, correct. Now, we have to purchase the endorsement in order to meet those deductibles.
Right.
But
exactly.
yes.
But I'm just saying, but yeah.
Yeah, just because we say we are going to elect to have the acknowledgement, that doesn't mean that across the board, we pay $10,000 per
Right,
occurrence.
so if we don't purchase coverage at all and something happens, we could pay a lot more.
Oh, yes,
Sure. Yeah, okay.
yes. Like in the trust webinar that I attended, they repeatedly said, it's really easy to file a lawsuit. It's harder to win one, but we would still have all of those legal expenses with anybody that could potentially file a lawsuit.
All right, so my question is, Aaron, or maybe Kendra?
Probably Kendra from you, Joe.
Kendra, how deep would we have coverage to? What does our $20,000 get us?
Yeah, everyone can hear me, I assume.
Yes,
Good evening.
good evening.
Okay, so the endorsement is the general liability coverage that you guys have with the trust has extremely generous limits in the market. After the COVID-19 exclusion came into play with our reinsurance partners, we obviously created this endorsement, kind of a homegrown model, if you will. And so the normal limit that you receive on some of your other liability lines with the trust are not available for this COVID-19 endorsement. So the endorsement has a $1 million per occurrence limit, a $2 million annual aggregate for you as a member, and then a $25 million annual aggregate for all members. And those limits have been created because the trust is putting some of our net position at risk here to create and fund the endorsement. So you guys, and Aaron touched on it, a big piece of this, as you understand, COVID-19 is a communicable disease, and so it's going to be harder to prove that a claimant got COVID-19 while on one of your campuses, but the legal fees still could become several $100,000, and you all know about those fees and kind of how that quickly happens. And so while we don't think you'll regularly be hitting that $1 million per occurrence mark, it is there if you need it. And then the $2 million is probably the more applicable one, that if you guys were to have a lot of claims throughout the year, that $2 million mark would come into play.
So my
Does
last,
that answer your question?
you did answer it, but I do have a follow-up now that you gave that information. So on that $25 million aggregate, that includes all of the Arizona school districts combined?
That includes all of the Arizona school districts that elect to carry the endorsement. So the trust has 247 members, and however many of those elect to carry the endorsement, they would share that $25 million.
Okay, all right. I appreciate it. Thanks, Kendra.
Of course.
And thank you, Aaron.
Is that it?
Yeah, that was pretty
All
easy, huh?
right, well, thank you very much. Kendra, thank you for being on call this evening. We appreciate it and appreciate your knowledge.
Of course. Have a good evening.
Thanks, you as well.
You too, Kendra, thanks.
Everyone else has left the call.
All one call left. All right, so item 2B is recognitions, proclamations. It's a time set aside by the board and superintendent to recognize any doings or anybody. Anybody have anything?
I have nothing. No.
Not this time. All right. Thanks, everybody. So item number 3 is call to the public. And I was presented with one request to address the board. And I'm assuming you're Amber. Yep. Okay, so we have Amber Wolfgang. And if you'll please come to the podium and speak into that microphone, please.
Good evening. So I know this whole remote learning is frustrating for everybody, but I'm not quite sure how much you guys know the frustration level goes, especially for those of us that are working and are considered essential and don't get the choice of working from home. One of my concerns is I have 2 kids in the elementary school. My youngest one being 1st grade, my oldest being 5th grade. I am a little concerned, I shouldn't say a little, I'm actually highly concerned, that 5 to 10 minute learning sessions is not adequate. You know, trying to teach somebody a new skill, especially as they're learning the academic foundations, nobody can learn a new skill set in 5 to 10 minutes, not even an adult. So, I mean, that's a little rough, especially when you're dealing with 6-year-olds. You know, trying to get them to sit in front of a computer for any amount of time is difficult anyway. Another concern that I had is teachers not being properly trained on the remote learning accesses or the capabilities. One of the school sessions that on my day off that I had to sit in with my son, we ran into a few glitches of one of the other children that was in the class. Their parent was also a teacher. Everybody's mics were open. Okay, it happens, you know, not the end of the world. But one of the children's parents was also a teacher. We could hear that individual teaching and not my child's teacher. I ended up having to open my son's mic and just say, hey, we can't hear you. I have no idea what you're trying to teach these kids. You know, so that makes it difficult also. The teacher did close out the mic, but whoever this individual was kept opening their mic like 3 and 4 times. In an hour session, that's really not teaching these kids much. Another issue that we had, you know, and everybody has it, is the connectivity. I get that. Not a big deal. But another thing that we keep running into is sessions being canceled. My daughter, who's in 5th grade, there's class, you know, essentially classes being canceled frequently because of connectivity or whatever. I'm not exactly sure. You know, other sessions of like specialties or those kinds of things not happening at all. Another issue that we've noticed as well is one session, my mother, who also is trying to assist with all of this on her day off as well, is you go into a session expecting to learn a subject and you talk about grades and what you've accomplished so far to date and not the material that's supposed to be taught. Also too, this is really rough on a lot of kids because they thrive off of routine and structure. I know my kids are being bounced around from house to house, daycare, you know, whoever can take them on the day off because we're essential. And I know my kids are like completely lost because there is no routine and structure. It's like, okay, the night before, okay, well, you're gonna go here. Next night, you're going here. There's no set thing. Where school, they had a set. They knew what was coming. You know, it gave them that routine and that structure of the day. And then also too, some of the stuff that's being taught nowadays, parents can't help them. You know, I had to sit with my 10-year-old the other night and go over order of operations. What I was trying to teach her, she had a hard time grasping because that's not how they were learning it. So it's very difficult for us parents too, because what they're being taught, we have no idea. We're now having to go on YouTube and Google it and trying to figure out what on earth is this. So that's just some of the frustrations that we've had. And really hoping that schools can get back to normal quickly because it's rough for everybody, you know, and like I said, I haven't had the chance or the privilege to work at home. I have to go to work every day, you know, so it's hard. It's hard on the kids, it's hard on everybody. So I just wanted to let you guys know of some of those issues that were coming into play. I know you're aware of some of them, but I didn't know to what extent you are aware of some of the other issues.
I appreciate that, and obviously we can't have a discussion
No.
about it, but I just wanted to let you know we hear you. And I'll ask the superintendent that some of the concerns that were raised, they were a little bit new to me to hear, so perhaps she can address that with the site as well.
Yeah, I mean, a little bit of background with me is I work with telemedicine, telehealth. So I have a very good idea of how this remote learning is supposed to work. I work with physicians in how to work with this. So, you know, without the proper training beforehand, you're not going to get a good end result. And I know this is just temporary for everybody. I know this isn't the end-all solution. But with a little more preparation or a little bit better understanding of how the program works, because even myself, I'm not a fan of the Google Classroom. And I've done online education through college and everything. So even for me, I'm still trying to figure out some of it, and, you know, even trying to attach certain assignments that are being done outside the Google Classroom, like in IXL or those kinds of things, and trying to attach them so I make sure my child is getting credit for the assignment. So yeah,
I can appreciate that. Thank you, Amber.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You've got your notes. Thank you. All right, so item number item number 4 is our consent agenda. Does any board member have anything that needs to be pulled before we take action on the consent agenda? Hearing none, maybe we can get a motion to roll past that consent agenda.
Yes, I'll make the motion to approve the consent agenda items for August 18th, 2020 as submitted.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, sorry. It's been a long day.
Opposed? That motion carries. All right, so now we are into our action items. Item number 5A would be a request for approval of financial reports by Mrs. Erin Johnson. So we'll start with Mrs. Erin Johnson.
Hello again. So the financial report looks a pinch different than what it normally does. You don't have the little speedometer dashboard on the front page this month. We're still trying to work on building our new fiscal 21 model in our Forecast 5 system. So that's not up and running yet. So I had to pull these reports the old-fashioned way a little bit here and didn't have the click of a button this time or the fancy graphics. But as you can see, as compared to last year, month of July, we're doing very well. We're a little bit below. Don't get too excited. We've had some various POs and things that didn't get put in place at the same time as they did last year, some of our renewals and things like that. So I do expect us to be a little bit closer and in level with where we were in prior years at this time on the next report. But otherwise, obviously, we're trending well. Let's see here. And then as far as capital goes, same situation. We're beginning to use some of that capital money to place some orders and start get going on some of our projects and things in technology and as well as in maintenance. So starting the year off well in both funds. There are no, sorry, I almost forgot, Joe, until I looked over at you. I could see you were waiting. So excuse me. Our budget balances are positive. We are in compliance, and there are no surprises to the best of my knowledge.
Very good.
I have a question, and
Yes,
I just
ma'am.
noticed it. There's JTAD money in there for WestMec, or do we have WestMec students right now? Yes?
Yes.
Awesome. Okay, I just saw that.
Can get a motion for Erin's reports?
Okay, I'll make a motion to approve the financial report as submitted.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And that motion carries. Item 5B, action item, request for approval of the Wickenburg Unified School District Governing Board and Superintendent Communication Protocols. I assume everybody had a chance to look at that and very familiar with that. We'll entertain a motion on that unless you have some discussion on it.
Okay, I'll make a motion to approve the Wickenburg Unified School District Governing Board and Superintendent Communications Protocol as submitted.
Second.
Barbara, do you want to speak to it?
Yes, I just want to thank the board for their participation in this training that we engaged with Arizona School Boards Association. It was very valuable to me, and I appreciate the document that we've provided that would help us guide our work. So thank you very much for that.
Very good, thanks, Barbara. And also, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Took myself out of sequence, did you see that? But I pulled it right back in.
Good job. Proud of you, Joe.
Well, thank you. I thought I was the only one. All right, item 5C is action item, resolution for reduction in square footage for the Arizona School Facilities Board. And you've read that and understand where that came from, correct? Any discussion for that, or can we get that one off the plate? Hello.
I'll make a motion to approve the resolution for reduction in square footage for the Arizona School Facilities Board as submitted.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries as well. Item 5D is action item, request for approval of the purchase of COVID-19 liability coverage, as we had the presentation on.
Can I ask a question about this? So we
Sure.
have in the motion to approve September 15th. Does that mean we'll set it up for that day if anything changes before then?
Correct.
Okay. Oh, and it says it in there. Huh? Sorry.
That's okay.
So we will purchase it by the 15th. So
Yes.
So we'll get it retroactive.
Yes, the only way that we wouldn't purchase it by the 15th would be is if we're granted immunity
Okay.
in the state or federal level, at the state or
Okay.
federal level.
All right, I'll make this motion to approve the September 15th, 2020 purchase of COVID-19 liability coverage through the Arizona School Board, Arizona School Risk Retention Trust, and require an acknowledgement of risk form for students attending school in person and a waiver of liability for student athletes, volunteers, and contractors if the district has not been granted immunity from claims through either state or federal legislation.
I'll second.
All in favor of that?
Aye.
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 Opposed? That motion carries. Thank you. Item 5E, first reading of Policy Advisory 673 IHA, which is Basic Instructional Program. All right. Item 5F, action item, suspension of Policy BGB for the purpose of emergency adoption of Policy ACA, sexual harassment of Policy ACAA, Title IX, sexual harassment.
Mr. President, I'm not sure you took action on item E.
That's just the
There's-
first reading.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for that, because of the way I've been doing, yeah. Don't. No, because I almost did the same thing, and I'm the one sitting here. Anyway.
Well, it's
uh,
a first reading, but nobody had any questions, I
Right.
guess,
Yeah.
about it,
Right.
so.
So,
Okay, I'll make a motion to approve suspending Governing Board Policy BGB as it pertains to a first and second reading of adjustments to policy for the purpose of addressing the emergency adoption of Policy ACA, sexual harassment, and Policy ACAA, Title IX, sexual harassment.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries. All right, last action item is item 5G, emergency adoption of policy ACA, sexual harassment, and policy ACAA, Title IX, sexual harassment.
Okay, I'll make a motion to adopt policy ACA, sexual harassment, and policy ACA, I'll read that over, policy ACAA, Title IX, sexual harassment on an emergency basis.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Sandy. All right, so item 6, informational items. Items for future agendas. Anybody have anything?
I have a question. Are we going to discuss as a board sometime in the near future about fall athletics? And whether we will or will not, participate?
Can you help with that one?
I can help with that. The leadership team at the high school has presented a proposal that's in line with the Arizona Interscholastic Athletics, I always get that wrong, AIA, for beginning the seasons, the fall seasons, with the waiver of liability as well as the precautions for social distancing, with the intent of beginning practice for the fall sports next week. And then we'll make the determination about competitions for the different sports based on what the current situation is. All of the athletic competitions have been pushed back, and they have varying degrees. So I can either provide a report to the board in the board memo, or we can certainly provide an update at the September board meeting if you would like that as well.
I think I'd like to see it on the agenda for September.
Yeah, I would.
Absolutely.
Anybody else?
Regarding the distance learning and potential questions that we had, is there some sort of communication to families that we might want to have going forward on that? We don't necessarily need to make it an agenda item if there is going to be some sort of follow-up. I just wanted to ask
I can
about.
provide some information on that. Met with the communication team today, and we will be working this week to develop additional avenues to gain information from our staff, our teachers, as well as our parents in the next few weeks about remote learning and what we can do to improve that as we are navigating that new environment.
Awesome.
Everybody else good? Sandy? Nate?
No, I was kind of thinking what Susan just asked.
Oh, okay. She knew that.
I know.
All right, so item 6B, announcements and calendar. You saw the electronic version of those. And item 7, closing of the meeting.
You want to do that one, Sandy? 7? Wow.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries, and we are now adjourned at 6:04 PM. Thank you.
Thank you.
Had us turned off. Not the, are these off now?